The police chief tells me even the FBI is analyzing the recording and voices for clues. The chief says the investigation took deputies here on Tuesday. To Rice Creek Park, which borders New Brighton, Mounds View, and Fridley, all areas where McCabe was reported seen or a cell phone ping placed him. Ramsey County Water Patrol searched but came up empty.
Hello again, beautiful people of YouTube. I have another story here today that's slightly off topic of what might be considered the norm for this channel so far, but I want to remind you guys that the goal for this channel is to lead it wherever you want to take it, no matter how strange those places might be. There's very few topics that I won't cover here, so when I get requests from sincere viewers, that's enough to motivate me and get me in gear so I can start looking into these more bizarre stories. Plus, I love you guys, so I'll pretty much do whatever you want. And, well, here we are. I have to admit that I had never heard of this phenomenon that we're about to get into today, but I couldn't be more excited about it. This is the beauty of taking requests like this. There's a good chance that I never even would have heard about any of this if it wasn't for you guys. This whole interesting and confusing mess is most widely known as the missing 411 phenomenon, aptly named after the retired SWAT team officer, detective, and super badass dude David Paulides. Okay, actually we should back up for a minute. Everybody in North America knows that national parks can be dangerous places. I mean, come on. If you're in the remote wilderness of Canada or Wyoming, you could easily get picked off by a mountain lion or a grizzly bear or anything like that, right? If you're in the Florida Everglades, you might get unlucky and feed a rogue alligator or step on a rattlesnake or water moccasin. Walk too far off the trail in the Arizona desert, you might get heat stroke, never make your way out. If you step foot into any of our national parks, you could very easily find yourself disoriented and lost, or freeze to death, or starve to death, or meet any number of unfortunate possibilities. It happens. It's just the way it is. It's the price we pay in exchange for a glimpse of the overwhelming beauty that these remote areas have to offer, right? Well, yes, of course. But what about the very rare and truly bizarre cases that can't be solved by these typical explanations or reasons for disappearance? What if I told you they actually aren't even rare at all, that they're part of an ever-growing epidemic of disappearances and extremely strange deaths that occur in these remote areas? And according to the evidence, it looks like it's even now spreading into more urban areas. And guys, I'm talking about extremely weird cases. Experts are experts. They know the signs, they have a very high success rate when it comes to search and rescue, and even higher when it comes to figuring out what happened to you when you don't come back. For a case to be even considered as part of the missing 411 phenomenon, it has to meet certain criteria. According to David Paulides himself, these are the circumstances that must be met for it to even be considered part of the missing 411. So as you can see here, what is the criteria used to select the missing 411 cases? David Paulides has said his Can-Am missing team rule out any cases where there is clear evidence of animal predation, mental health issues and suicidal intent, or the person deliberately wanted to walk away from their life and not be found, a crime, or a drowning. David Paulides has said that cases are included even if there is evidence of one or more of the above because of the circumstances surrounding them. So as you can see, guys, we're not talking about 127 hours type of situations. We're talking about stuff that is way more creepy and confusing. We're talking about cases so weird that the experts are confused about what happened. Guys that try to solve these things for a living were so creeped out by it that they literally contacted this former detective to tell him about it and to try to motivate him into getting some answers. People are disappearing under extremely rare circumstances. This stuff is like some kind of horrifying cross between Stranger Things and an episode of The X-Files. This is not limited to national parks either. Even though a lot of the more terrifying cases are related to outings in the wilderness, this phenomenon is spreading to populated areas as well. We'll have more than enough time to get into the national parks cases, so I wanted to start this whole thing off by getting into a specific example that took place in more of a residential area, far away from the wilderness. And it took place in the town of Mounds View, Minnesota, and has never been completely solved even to this day. This is the case of Henry McCabe, a 32-year-old Liberian immigrant that worked as an auditor for the IRS. While his family was away in California, Henry spent the late evening and early morning hours of September 7, 2015 at a nightclub. Not too creepy yet, but just wait. After Henry left the club around 2 a.m., one of the friends that he left with told investigators that Henry asked to be dropped off at a gas station that was a couple miles in the opposite direction of his house. Then at 2:28 a.m., about half an hour or so after he was dropped off, Henry's wife, Corinne McCabe, received a voicemail from Henry's cell phone and heard her husband screaming in extreme distress, which sounded like he was being horrifically tortured or something. The full-length voicemail has never been released, but a short snippet from it was made public, which ended with several seconds of silence and what sounds like a male voice saying, "Stop it." Here's the snippet of that voicemail now.
It's a voicemail unlike anything you've ever heard before. There are 2 minutes worth of noises, bizarre ones, but very little actual talking. Authorities confirmed the disturbing middle-of-the-night call came from Henry McCabe's cell phone. It was Labor Day, September 7th at 2:28 in the morning. McCabe's worried wife heard the message.
His and my cell phone connected.
Minnesota Community Policing Services is a nonprofit agency and acts as a go-between with police and the Liberian community. The leader is trying to help the family make some sense of this recording.
The growls turned to high-pitched moans.
Like he's moaning in pain.
Like moaning in pain.
The tortured grunts suddenly stop. There is silence. Then someone, either Henry or another person, says, "Stop it."
I try to picture where he was, what it might have been like, what circumstances would have made him sound like that.
The voicemail is in stark contrast to other articulate recordings of McCabe speaking at an event. He's a state auditor.
When it's a justification, what is the right thing to do?
The message is one piece of evidence Mounds View police are reviewing. The police chief tells me even the FBI is analyzing the recording and voices for clues. The chief says the investigation took deputies here on Tuesday. To Rice Creek Park, which borders New Brighton, Mounds View, and Fridley, all areas where McCabe was reported seen or a cell phone ping placed him. Ramsey County Water Patrol searched but came up empty.
So what does that sound like to you guys? I haven't been able to find out specifically why the full voicemail has not been released, but people who have heard it say that it's completely unforgettable in the worst way imaginable. So continuing on with the story here, Henry's phone was disconnected shortly after this call, and he virtually disappeared without a trace. Until that is November 2nd, nearly 2 months after he vanished into the night. Henry's body was found in Rush Lake, somewhere close to 4 miles from the gas station where he was dropped off. Now, even though investigators believe they heard him saying that he had been shot in a segment of the unreleased voicemail, he had no wounds or injuries on his body whatsoever. There was actually no evidence of foul play at all, and the medical examiner ruled his death as an accidental drowning, but suicide was not ruled out as a possibility either. It's perfectly possible that Henry stumbled into the lake and drowned because he was intoxicated at the time. But none of these typical explanations would even begin to account for the bizarre and terrifying sounds allegedly heard in that full voicemail. Even the short section of the voicemail that we've been able to hear still doesn't seem like the sound of a drunk man walking to a lake. Many describe the sound as if he was being tortured by some kind of unknown party, I guess you could say. And remember guys, this is only one example out of literally tens of thousands of examples. So what do you think? What happened to Henry? Why do you think investigators were so baffled about this case if there's nothing to it? And let me know if you guys find this subject interesting and want me to cover it in more depth. Trust me, this one example does not even come close to scratching the surface. I just picked it because it's the last one I read about during my research today, and I wanted an example that wasn't limited to national parks. David Paulides has written numerous books on these strange disappearances and deaths, so we will have no shortage of source material if you guys do want to see more of this stuff. Send me an email or leave me a comment and let me know. When you start getting into the other stories, believe me, there are countless examples that just defy logic. Theories about this whole phenomenon include everything from people stumbling into portals or time skips, all the way to alien abduction or even secret government kidnapping for experimentation test subjects. I know, it sounds completely preposterous, but you'll see what I mean when we start to get deeper into it. And there you have it. We have a lot of exciting stuff coming out soon, so don't forget to check back. I will see you guys then. Peace.
Summer travel season is nearly here, which means millions of people will be heading for national parks and national forests. As it turns out, a few of them won't be coming back.
Each year, hundreds of people are reported missing in our parks and forests. Most are eventually found, but there's a smaller category of cases that never get solved, including a few close to home. The I-Team's George Knapp is here with the story. George.
It's not a revelation to say that people get lost out in the wilderness or in forest areas. We're talking about a different kind of mystery, though. Disappearances that are not caused by predator attacks or criminals hiding out there in the woods or just bad luck. A former cop has put together hundreds of case files regarding clusters of missing persons in national parks where the circumstances are flat out strange. But don't expect any answers from the Park Service.
At the end of the night, I was staying in a motel off the government or off the Park Service land. I get a knock on the door.
The person who confided in law enforcement veteran David Paulides was a government employee who told one heck of a story about people who vanish in national parks, places like Yosemite, but also national forests, including the Toyabe, west of Las Vegas. In the years since the knock at the door, Paulides has scoured small-town newspaper archives and pestered federal agencies for records. He found so many cases of missing people that a planned book became two, filled with more than 400 cases of people who went into national parks but never came out.
People disappear in the wilds all the time, and we're talking about something different. These were unusual things that don't make sense, that happen to cluster together in 3 to 4, sometimes as many as 20, 30 people missing at one location.
The individual cases are strange enough, Paulides says, but stranger still were the reactions of federal agencies when he asked for public records.
And when we FOIA'd them, we got a response back that they don't keep any lists of missing people.
The response was not only no, but hell no, he says, so he began putting his own list together and discovered what appears to be nearly 30 clusters of disappearances in national parks and forests, cases which meet a narrow set of odd characteristics. The people who vanish often do so right under the noses of others, in many cases of kids, their parents' noses.
Being parents and being responsible people, we understand there's no way my son or daughter wouldn't know the way back from being just down the road getting the ball.
But it happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
The missing defy logic. They hike uphill, for instance, often steep climbs. Children as young as 2 or 3 are found a day or two later many miles away and over mountain ranges.
Some kids are found in phenomenal distances away that would make no logical sense to any parent.
Weird things happen to their clothing. The missing often shed their clothes right away, even in bad weather. Clothes are found sometimes neatly folded, but not the people.
The ranger described to me, if you were standing straight up and you just had your shirt or just had your pants on and you melted directly into your pants, that's what it looked like to him. The pants were laying on the ground in a very neat pile.
The missing defy normal search and rescue practices. Bodies are found in places that are all but inaccessible, or they're found in the open, in areas that were repeatedly searched earlier. Bloodhounds or other tracker dogs are often befuddled.
If the dog can't find a scent, that's a red flag. If a dog, a canine dog, a trained dog, is put on the scent at the point last seen, and it lays down and it doesn't want to track anymore, red flag. And that happens more than you think.
Nevada doesn't have a major cluster, but it has plenty of cases. Children who vanished around Lake Tahoe, in the center of the state near Tonopah, and at Mount Charleston. In 1966, 6-year-old Larry Jeffrey of Henderson disappeared while playing with his 2 brothers, setting off a massive 16-day search by as many as 1,000 men. Former Sheriff Ralph Lamb remembers it clearly.
Walked away from camp. Never did hear from him, never did see him, never did find him. We had hundreds of people there working, almost shoulder to shoulder.
There's no large predators per se. So we can't worry about mammals taking him. and he was in a fairly remote area where there's no vehicular access, so there's no car abduction. This boy just walked into oblivion. And in an age where you have aircraft up looking for the boy, you have 800 people scouring the mountain, you should be able to find him. That coupled with, if he was deceased, part of that ongoing effort is bringing in cadaver dogs. The odor coming off the body, they should have found that. They didn't.
Other aspects of this mystery are even more bizarre, though difficult to explain in just a couple of minutes. Example, many of the vanished who are found alive are kids too young to speak, or kids who can't communicate because of disabilities. Some who are found alive say they can't remember what happened to them. In his books, David Paulides reports on why some obvious explanations simply don't apply here, but he stops short of giving his own theory or explanation. Paulides says he doesn't want to scare people away from visiting parks, but thinks people need to be made aware. A month ago, we asked the Park Service and the Forest Service for their lists of local missing persons cases. Still waiting. We have links and more information about all this stuff on our website. Check it out.